Welcome to Northwest Church Online. Thank you so much for tuning in. As you watch the message today, you can access the notes and follow along in the link in the description. Thank you again for joining us. Let's jump into the message.
Well, hey, I want to jump right in to Scripture today. So if you got your Bibles, I hope you brought it with you. Maybe you're on your phone, or you can follow along on the screen. And if you're online, it'll be in the comments for you to keep up with. But today we'll be in Psalm 46. We'll be starting in verse 1. So I'm going to give you a second. Go ahead and flip to Psalm 46. And as you're doing that, I'm going to kind of give a little background to what we're looking at here. So in this passage, we believe the writers are the sons of Korah, and who they are. They're Levite priests, descendants of Levite priests. And what they would do is that they would write songs of worship to be sung in the temple. And so what we're going to read here is a song of worship that the nation of Israel is singing. We believe this was written around 701 BC. So at the time, the nation of Israel, they're at war with the Assyrians. And to kind of give you just a glimpse of what the Assyrians are, they're a big, fierce, powerful nation. Their weapons, their military tactics, everything about them and their power is much greater than the nation of Israel. It kind of looks like Arkansas yesterday and the whooping they put on that team. You know, it's a David and Goliath moment. It's the nation of Israel looks at them like, man, this is much bigger than us. So as you can imagine, if you're entering into conflict with someone who is much bigger and much stronger than you, you can assume that you'd be experiencing much anxiety, much fear. Why? Because you don't have the upper hand. Just from a logistics standpoint, just looking at it from a distance, when you see this, if someone's bigger, stronger, and more powerful, you don't really go into that fight thinking that, hey, I have a chance to win this. So this is where the nation of Israel is. They're up against battle against a big and powerful army. So what we understand is, and what we can all agree and think, is that Israel is experiencing anxiety. There's fear. There's chaos, wondering, what do we do? How are we going to be able to battle? How are we going to fight this war? And this is what takes us to this worship song that they're singing in the temple. And in Psalms 46, starting in verse 1, this is what the writers write. It says, God is our refuge and our strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. So we will not fear when earthquakes come and the mountains crumble into the sea. Let the oceans roar and foam, let the mountains tremble and the waters surge. A river brings joy to the city of our God, the sacred home of the Most High. It says God dwells in that city. It cannot be destroyed. From the very break of day, God will protect it. The nations are in chaos and their kingdoms crumble. God's voice thunders and the earth melts. The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. Verse 8, it says, come see the glorious works of the Lord. See how he brings destruction upon the war. It says he causes wars to end throughout the earth. He breaks the bow and snaps the spear. He burns the shields with fire. And in verse 10, I want you to notice here there's a shift from what they're singing and what they're worshiping and what the writers had written. But here, God speaks. In the midst of all the praise and worship and the chaos of war, this is what he speaks to the nation of Israel. In verse 10, it says, be still and know that I am God. He says, I will be honored by every nation, and I will be honored throughout the world. And then it concludes in verse 11 as it goes back to the song saying that the Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. I think for many of us today, we may not find ourselves necessarily in an intense physical battle like we see here from the nation of Israel, but I think we can all relate that maybe you walked in today, but we have moments in life that can seem chaotic, where anxiety, depression, fear, they begin to attack us. Maybe some of you today just driving to church, you've already had an argument with your spouse, you've already freaked out on the kids, and you just barely made it into church today, and you're like, man, I can relate to this. Because reality is every day, every morning's not all sunshine and rainbows. If it was perfect, that'd be great. But I think we can all realize that life itself inevitably comes with battles. You see, according to a study done by the U.S. Census, it says nearly 4 in 10 adults, so picture that, that's really close to half, 4 and 10. So think about proportionately in this room. Like these two sections over here, 4 and 10 reported that they experienced symptoms of anxiety or depression. That's wild. We live in a nation and time where depression and anxiety is very prevalent. And I know you might be thinking, it's natural, we're human, and we have these things, but day in, day out, we experience these things. It's a battle. It's not easy, and we recognize that. But as we look back to the nation of Israel and what they're going through and how we can relate, I found it very interesting that in the midst of that, God speaks. And most importantly, I found it interesting what he spoke. In verse 10, what did he say? It said, to be still and know that I am God. You see, the Hebrew word for still is rapha, and what that means is to relax, to cease fighting, to stop striving, to stop doing it all your own. And really what this is not a call to doing less or stopping action, but simply a call of God to his people back to him. It is a call to acknowledge his sovereignty and his power in the midst of chaos. You see, to be very honest this week, as I was talking to Pastor David and Chase, who were speaking this at our Springdale and Farmington campuses today, and Pastor David was sharing, hey, we're going to tackle this passage in the book of Psalms, and I'm reading it, and I come across be still, and, I'm studying, getting the message in my heart, going through it, and praying and asking God what would he have shared. And then later that afternoon on Monday, I get a call from my mom, and she goes, hey, just wanted to let you know that your 17-year-old cousin, she's missing. Family can't find her. There's no traces of her. We can't find anything. We have no idea what's going on. And in that moment, we had this, it's just like anxiety. It's not even fear, but you just have, you expect the worst, and you're thinking of everything that could go wrong, but you're praying and asking God for the best. And immediately my mind goes to my aunt and uncle, and I'm thinking, what are they feeling? What are they doing? And I'm in the midst of that, I'm reading this passage, and I'm thinking, be still, be still. And I asked the question, how do you tell someone to be still in the middle of such uncertainty, chaos, anxiety, fear? You don't know what's coming next. You have no idea what's going on. You have no leads. But how do you tell someone to be still? How do you be still when doing nothing and sitting back and just, trusting things are going to work out seems like the most illogical thing to do in the moment? And as I struggled with this, and I was like, God, what is it when you're speaking to us to be still? What are you communicating to us? And then it was on Thursday night, they had found my cousin. Everything was okay, and I'm sitting there, and I felt God speak to me, because you see what's significant in this passage is that it's a song of worship, but in one verse, God jumps in and speaks. And in the midst of chaos, what does he say? He says, be still and know that I am God. Because many times we use this scripture as a point of comfort, and we give it to other people, and we're just like, hey, be still, calm down, you'll be good. I know this is stressful, but hey, just be still and trust that I am God. But no, what this is God calling people back to him. And sometimes we use this as an offering of peace, and we try to call people to be still, to live in a peace that we cannot create and offer them. For it was God here that spoke. It was God calling his people back to his sovereignty and his presence, because we know today that it is within his presence that we experience his peace, his power, and his love, and his mercy. But I believe that also begs the question that we ask, when God, in those moments of anxiety, whether it's depression, whether it's chaos, whether it's fear, you feel like you just can't get a grip on life, and he jumps in and he calls us to be still and to know that he is God, what is it exactly he's asking us to know about him? When God calls us to know him, what should we know about him in those moments? What should we remind ourselves about God in those moments? And the good thing is today, I believe Scripture speaks to us and gives us answers to the questions we have about life and in seasons of uncertainty. So as we look to this passage, I got 3 things, and if you're taking notes, you can follow along. If you're online, you can follow along. You can download the notes on our webpage. But number 1, if you're taking notes, I believe God would remind us that I am your protector. In verse 1, if we look back, it says that God is our refuge. And in the context here, the Hebrew word for refuge means a shelter, and specifically speaking to a shelter that is used to shelter from storm. You see, many of us in this area, we are no stranger to tornadoes. Some in this room maybe even have a storm shelter in your house, or maybe you wanted a basement for that specific purpose, to be on like lower level, to be more protected, or maybe you just run and hide in the closet that's centrally located, or if you're like me, I just stay in bed. I know it's not wise, it's not safe. My wife does not like it, but I guess I've become content that if it's my time, it's my time. And then worst case scenario, if something happens, I'll wake up and look at my dog and go, Toto, we aren't in Kansas anymore. I don't recommend that. Please don't do that. But whatever your storm shelter looks like, if it's in the comfort of your sheets and in your bed, or maybe you're have a nice shelter, or you're just kind of sitting in a closet, whatever that looks like, the purpose of these shelters is to provide protection that we cannot find anywhere else. And I don't know if you experienced this, you have the nights you're in bed, and then there's a tornado warning, and the sirens are going off, and everything's hectic, the dog's barking, your spouse and kids are running around, and nothing in that moment matters. All you're thinking about is running and getting to that shelter. And what I want you to pay attention here is the scripture says that God is our refuge. He is our shelter from the storm. So just like in the midst of severe weather, when you run to that shelter, we serve a God today that desires that you run to him, find shelter, find protection in him when life is crazy, when it's too much for you, when you can't see what tomorrow brings. He calls us to find shelter in him. You see, something else I want you to note is that the nation of Israel, they had built walls around Jerusalem as a defense from the attack of the enemy. See, it's a very common thing during this time. You know, nations and empires, they build walls. Simply keep the bad guys out, keep the good guys safe. And in verse 5, what do we read? It says, God dwells in that city. It cannot be destroyed. From the very break of day, God will protect it. When it says God will protect it, what it's saying is that God will surround the city. So what we see here, it was not the physical walls that were the true source of protection for the nation of Israel, but it was God's presence resting over them. You see, just like in our lives, it's not protection we find in what we can do, what guards we can put up, but simply by the presence of God residing in our lives. You see, many of us today, I think we can relate, and if we were very honest with ourselves, not every issue we experience in life is the result of just external things that always keep happening. Because it's easy to think we can come in on the weekend and we hear these messages and we'll leave and we'll almost create these battles that don't even exist. Why? Because we treat everything as conflict. We treat everything externally as, oh, this is a battle, this is a battle. But what we understand when we live and we walk in proximity with Christ, in his presence, that he offers protection. Because the reality is, when we look at the nation of Israel, we would think it's foolish for someone in the Israelite army to step outside of that protection, to pick a fight, and to experience the same defense and protection that he would inside the city. We would think that's crazy. Like, what are you doing? Why would you go out there? God's presence is here. The walls are here for a reason. But when we walk out that doors, we go into life. We walk outside of God's presence. We live how we want. We do what we want. But we still want to experience the same protection that we receive when we're walking with him. Maybe today, the attacks that you experience aren't just skilled attacks by the enemy. Maybe it's because you're walking around defenseless. Maybe because you come on Sunday and you think, hey, I'm armored up today. I'm going to make it through the week. No, we must armor up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, because we serve an enemy who seeks to kill and destroy. And if he seeks to kill and destroy, he's not just operating on Sunday. He's working out through the week. So armor up. Walk in God's presence. What does Proverbs say? It says, the name of the Lord is a strong fortress, and the godly run to him and are safe. The godly run to their shelter. We run to our protector. We run to our fortress. He's never wavering. He's always there. So in the midst of chaos, if you feel the attacks of the enemy, run to your shelter. You see, God was the source of protection for the nation of Israel then, and he is still your protection today. He is the same God yesterday, today, and forevermore. So if you believe that today, run to him. Find peace in him. Find his protection. Secondly, I believe God would want us to know is that he tells us is that I am your provider. If you're taking notes, number 2, I am your provider. If we look back again at verse 1, the writers say that God is our refuge and strength. You see, in the Hebrew, this word means to be strengthened by. So the writers, what they knew is that they knew that their power was not from their skill, from their strategy, or what they could offer in the battle, but it came from the God in which they served. You see, in verse 9, it says, he causes wars to end throughout the earth. He breaks the bow and snaps the spear. He burns the shields with fire. Every time I read that, I just get pumped up because I visualize like a war action movie. This is the God we serve. He causes wars to end throughout the earth. He breaks the bows and snaps the spear. He burns the shields with fire. See, in other words, what this is saying is that it is God who provides the victory. It is God who is our strength. And maybe, just maybe, our struggle today and the fear and the pressure and the anxiety we experience is because we are trying to operate in a strength that is from our own power and not that of God who is living and working in us. Maybe, just maybe, the tension and the conflict we experience in life is because 1, we're moving in a direction God never intended us to move. 2, we're striving for things God never intended us to striving for. And I think we can relate that sometimes we try to be someone that God never created us to be. So when you look at life and you're looking for areas of conflict, let's first examine ourselves and ask God, are you reigning in my life? Am I following you? God, am I allowing you to be my provider? Because in those moments, God is speaking us to be still and know that I am God, that I am sovereign, that I am your strength, that I've already provided. So stop trying to do it on your own. See, in 2 Corinthians, it says, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weakness so that the power of Christ can work through me. Come on, are you thankful today that we serve a God that even in the midst of our weakness, that he recognizes that and he gives us power and strength that we could not come with on our own? Are you thankful that in the times that we fall short, that we serve a God who loves us so much that he gives us strength through his power at work in us? And I think a very honest question today, and many are probably looking at me like, Pastor Jay, this sounds great. I know God is our provider. I've come to church all my life. I hear this. But I struggle with this, or maybe you're like, I've just never seen God really just provide in my life. I always feel like my whole life I've been in this rut. I've always felt like I've been in lack. I've never felt like I have all that I need. And it's an honest question. I think many of us have probably came into Sunday experiences and asked the same question, like, man, is God my provider? God, when are you going to provide? God, when are you going to come through? I know these things. And then in the midst of those questions, I know one thing's for sure for everybody in this room. For us as Christ followers, maybe you can't recount the moments that God provided and God came through and God made a way for you in your life, but in those moments where you have doubt, I would simply point you to look at the cross. Because for everybody in here, whether you feel like God is your provider or you feel like he's let you down, he has provided a way for all of us, and he's done more than enough through his work on the cross. Just like the song we sang, thank you, Jesus, for the blood. For it is by his blood for which you were saved. Because you see, he provided from the beginning when he knew that man had fallen and we had sinned, and we were on a straight path on spending eternity away from God. And God knew that we could not live in righteousness on our own, and we could not fulfill the law. So what did he do? In his grace and in his mercy, he withheld punishment, and he sent his son, Jesus, to come and live a perfect life, to become the spotless lamb who would be the ultimate sacrifices for the sin of you and I that we could not pay for on our own. He would go to the cross, die, be in the tomb for 3 days, raise again so that we could spend eternity with our Heavenly Father. So if you ever doubt his provision, that if he can provide, look to the cross, because you'll see the biggest moment of history when he provided a way for you and I when we couldn't. You see, many times we live as if we're singing, we sing this song in church, Jesus paid it all. And it's a phenomenal song, and we sing it confidently. But we live in a way as if the lyrics are, Jesus paid it some to him I owe. Sin that left a crimson stain, Jesus washed as much as he could. It's a humorous moment, but the sad, sad reality is that many of us will walk out those doors and live a life as if Jesus didn't pay it all. Every sin, every wrong that you did, he came and he loved you so much that he paid it all. He paid it all. So if you ever doubt if he's your provider, look to the cross. He's already done more than enough. Lastly, number 3, what I believe God would speak to us is that I am your present help. See, verse 1 says, he is always ready to help in times of trouble. Maybe you've heard it this way in different translations, that he is our ever-present help in time of need. You see, I have an 18-month-old. His name's McCoy. He's full of energy, fire. He tears up stuff all the time. He's a party and about like a very little body. So he's a lot. But you see, something we do, we pick him up from daycare, and this is clockwork. You cannot forget it. This is imperative, because if not, it'll be a very, very miserable ride home. But we bring not 1, but 2 snacks. And if we leave and we don't have those snacks, we will A, stop, or B, turn around and grab that snack. And if you maybe think that's a little exaggerated, that's crazy, I will let you pick him up from school this week without snacks. And I guarantee you'll have a Walmart pickup order ready for me the very next day. But you see, we take him to school, and as soon as we pick him up, open the doors, he comes at a beeline right to his parents, and he's going, eat, 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 eat. He's ready to eat. The dude's ready for his snacks. He doesn't play games. We get him in the car. We hand him his snack. He's already eaten it before we even get out of the school. And he's sitting there. But you see, one of the snacks he typically eats, they're the little gummies, and they come in the little foil wrapper. And the thing about it is when he gets down to the last few, he's trying to reach in the bag. But you see, the bag's really small, but also his hands are really small. And not only are his hands small, his fingers are small. And equally so, they're very chubby. So imagine the poor little kid in the back, and you hear him rustling around. He's frustrated. He wants the snack, and you sit there, and you kind of like, you got it, dude? You got it, dude? And for a while, I would turn around and ask him, hey, I'd just say, help? Do you want me to help you? And his response would be, no, stop it, no. And he'd turn away and hide his snack away because he didn't want me to take it. And then after time of building trust and him knowing that, hey, I'm just trying to help you out. I'm just trying to open the bag so you can get what you're trying to get to. Now I just turn around and go, hey, do you want me to help you? And he goes, yeah. Hands me the bag. I open it, and then he can have his snack. But you see, the reality is for him, for so long, the fear of losing his snack was greater than his desire to have help in getting it. Do you hear what I'm saying today? That sometimes for us, our fear of what we might lose or what even the outcome could be of a situation becomes so great that we lose sight of the one that is trying to help us in the midst of it. You see, with the nation of Israel, as they're at battle with the Assyrians, what the Assyrians would do during this time is that when they're at war to their enemies, they would send tablets with inscripted on them would be the torture that they would do once they had won and conquered you in battle. And this was a fear tactic to get in the mind of the enemy before the war and the battle even started. Hey, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to go down. So they're instilling fear in their minds before they've even started in conflict. And you see, just like many of us, the enemy begins to sow things, begins to speak fear and anxiety and all these things that could happen. And these become so overwhelming and so powerful that becomes the primary voice in our life. And we forget that we serve a God who is here to protect us, to provide for us, and to help us. He is our ever-present help in time of need. See, in verse 11, what does it say? It says that the Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. You see, the nation of Israel knew that God was among them and that God was their fortress. They knew that He was their help. And you see what's significant here is that phrase in this song was used twice. It's the only one repeated. And it was commonly used. And the phrase, the Lord of heaven's armies, was commonly used in the Old Testament to say that God is fighting for us. So they believed in their inner being that God was fighting for them, that He was their help, that He was their protection. They knew they were not fighting alone. And I believe God would speak to you today to know that you are not fighting alone. In Romans 8:31, it says, if God is for us, who can be against us? Come on, how encouraging is that? How empowering is that? Is that it's not by my strength, not by my might or power, but by the strength of Christ that lives in me. That if God is for me, who can be against me? I believe some of us today need to take that, write it on our mirror when we get up in the morning, and just begin to proclaim that if God is for me, who can be against me? It's a bold statement, and just as it is much encouraging, it takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of faith. It takes acknowledging the sovereign power of God at work in our lives. Because I believe today we read about a God who provided, who saved, who protected, and was their help. And I tell you today that God is calling us to be still and know that I am still your provider. I am still your protector, and I am still your help in time of need. So I believe that brings us to the question is whether or not God is all those things is not in question. We know that He's our provider. We know that He is our strength. We know that He protects us. We know that He desires to help us. We've seen it time and time again throughout His word. So it's not a matter as if God is those things, but are we willing to allow His presence to reign over our lives? Because you see on that second half of verse 10, it says that His name will be exalted among the heavens and among the earth, that He will reign, that His presence will reign. So today in this call to acknowledge the sovereign power of who He is in our life, are you willing to let Him reign over your life? Because let me tell you this, when He reigns and when His presence covers your life, it is within His presence that you will receive the protection. It is in His presence that you will receive peace. It is in His presence that you will receive strength. It is in His presence that you'll begin to understand and experience His mercy, His love, and His grace for you today. So the question is, will you stop, be still, and know that you serve a God who is sovereign, who is powerful, and who is for you? In closing today, I want to give you 3 quick things, because in reality, it sounds great. Okay, I'll acknowledge God's sovereignty. I'll acknowledge His presence. But then it comes the question, how do I do that? So I'm going to give you 3 quick things on how do I acknowledge the sovereignty of God at work in my life. If you're taking notes, number 1, that is simply stop striving. Stop working to make things happen on your own that only God can do. And then second to that, stop trying to do things that God hasn't called you to do. Pray that God would reveal to you his will. Ask God to align you with his agenda, not ask God to align his agenda with you. Number two, we must know God. It is very difficult to trust in someone and believe that they are your provider, your protector, and your strength if you do not know them. And maybe today, you're like, I've never heard of the gospel. I don't know God, and I feel like I go through every day in life fighting defenseless. I don't know what to do. Let me encourage you. You serve a God who is your help, who is your provider, and is your protector, and all you take is a moment to know him. And then number three, embrace his presence. Pray that his presence goes before you, that it goes behind you. Pray his presence over your home, over your family, over your workspace. Let your life be an example of the presence of God at work in it. Because again, you want to experience peace? Find yourself in God's presence. You want joy? Find it in God's presence. You want power? You want strength? You want to see God move? You want to hear God speak? You want to see him work? Find yourself in God's presence. You want to get closer with God? Be where he is. You want his power? Be where he is. Embrace his presence. Would you bow your heads today?
What a powerful message from the Word of God. Thank you so much for joining us today. And today, if you want to make a decision to become a Christ follower, you can go to northwestchurch.tv, hit the Church Online tab, and send us a message. We want to connect with you. We want to pray with you and help you take those next steps in your walk with Christ. Also today, make sure if this message encouraged you to share this with your friends and family, because if it encouraged you, it'll likely encourage someone else. Again, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.